Hello and welcome to this mamoworld After Effects tutorial. My name is Matthias, and in this tutorial I'm going to show you how to create the logo animation that you've just seen with the help of the Plexus plugin and the ExpressionTimeline. The tutorial consists of two parts. In the first part we create and animate the text of the logo using the Plexus plugin. To deform the text at the beginning and at the end of the animation, we are going to use so-called effectors. In the second part, we create and animate an abstract point cloud with the help of expressions. Since we need different expressions for different parts of the animation, we combine those with the help of the ExpressionTimeline. But now let's start with the first part and animating the logo. Okay, so let's start. I already prepared here some project in order to speed everything a little bit up, and what I did so far is that I created a main composition, and in this composition I have two layers. One is just the background soundtrack, and the second is a text layer, so simple plain text, nothing special, just something here created with the text tool, and where this text flies in here and stays like this for a while and then zooms out to the end, and all of this is so far just a simple animation of the scale property, so nothing fancy at all. For the text itself I just made it fit our logo, so this is our mamoworld logo, and I've just chosen the appropriate font, which is Pygiarnic, and the appropriate font size, such that the text layer here exactly matches or more or less matches our logo. Okay, what we want to do with this now is to apply the Plexus effect. So we go to Effects and Preset and choose Plexus, which is a brand new plugin that you can get now at aescripts.com. And when we apply it to the text layer, you see that it disappears at first. So what happens here? We have now the Plexus as effect on our layer, and the Plexus consists here of two parts. First is called Plexus Toolkit, and the second is called just Plexus. And Plexus defines how everything is rendered, so the details of how it's looking, and Plexus Toolkit is now used just to add objects and effectors to the Plexus. And since we currently have no object yet, it's completely black, so nothing visible here. So to change that, we go to Add Object, and what we want to add are in this case paths. So paths can be masks usually, or also texts. So if you apply a path object, or if you add a path object on a text layer, then by default this text will be taken as the path object. So now we have a text that is used as our Plexus. What is this Plexus? If we zoom in here a little bit more, you can see that now the outline of our text is taken as a path, and that the points of this path are all connected here by lines. And you can change here, for example, the number of points, so the number of vertices of this path. And if you do that, you see that it gets less detailed, and in our case we want to leave it here at the default, and the only thing that we want to change is that we want to modify this text when it fades in and fades out. You can see here it fades in, and during this fading we want it to deform, and what we use for this is Effector. So effectors are kind of modifiers that change the behavior or the looking of your points, of your objects. So we therefore go here to Add Effector and choose a Noise Effector. We want to add noise. You can see that now we have, in addition to our path object, here our noise effector, which has several options, and the most important one is the noise amplitude. So if we enlarge this, you can see that the text starts deforming. Yeah? And we want, at the beginning, we want it to be deformed quite a bit. So let's put this here to, yeah, maybe something like this. And we turn it into a keyframe. And but this should only be the case at the beginning, at the very beginning. So we go here to the noise effector, and for the amplitude we move this keyframe right to the beginning where the layer starts. So this is about here. Okay, and now we go to the point where the text is completely scaled up to 100%, so the zoom in is finished, and at about this point we reduce the noise to 0. Or maybe it's looking nicer if we do this a little bit later. Let's say something like 275 or so, that the zooming goes faster than the noise. So you can see now, let's look at a quick RAM preview. You can see the text zooms in and is completely deformed, and now it zooms into place, and now the noise disappears. Very nice. And we want to have a similar behavior also at the end, where it zooms out. So therefore we go here to something like here a bit before the zooming out starts, and add again a keyframe, and then we go a bit further, like when the fading is in place, so when it's going on, maybe at that moment, and we make quite a bit of noise again for the zooming out. So something like this, maybe, that the text is not visible anymore. And now we can see if we leave the zoom, the noise that large, then the point will not get very small here. So the noise makes this point cloud bigger than we want it to be at the end. So therefore, at the end, so let's say around here, a little bit later, when the zooming out is finished, we go again down with this noise amplitude to something very small. Something like this, that we only have a very compact point cloud left. So again, let's take a look at this now. So you can see now that it just zooms in like a very deformed cloud of points. So this already looks quite interesting. Now the point is here in the middle, between the fading in and fading out. I also want it to be a little bit more like interactive moving or so. And what we do therefore do is we also want here in between always to have a little bit of noise, but not too much. And instead of adding here now a lot of different keyframes, I will modify this with an expression. So with the Alt or Option key selected, I click on this stopwatch, and now I type wiggle. So we want to wiggle this property a bit, and we want to wiggle it very slowly, just 2 times a second. Therefore, I type here a 2, and then comma, and then 20. And the 2, comma 20 must be in parentheses, of course. So this says, make these follow these keyframes, but modify them a bit, that 2 times a second you vary it by a value of 20. And if we now take a look at it, we can see that it zooms in as before, and now when you see that the noise now the noise goes slowly away, but it doesn't disappear 100%. You can see you still have a little bit of movement and deformation going on here due to this wiggle expression. Very nice. Okay, so the next thing that we want to change is that it is not looking so great here having just these white lines. So we add another effect, and in this case we want to add Trapcode Shine. So we could first go to new layer and choose an adjustment layer. Let me just rename this to Shine. And then again we go to our effects here, search for Shine, and apply this very nice Trapcode plugin. Okay, you see that now we have these rays here, and we need to, or we want to adjust this effect a bit. First, these rays are much too long, yeah, so we change them to something like 0.5, which looks more interesting. And now this is not yet glowing enough for me, so I want to boost the light here. And I think for this boosting, yeah, it's a matter of taste, but I like to boost it quite a lot. So maybe something like this. And another thing that I want to change here is that I want to set the transform mode to add. And this makes still the lines become more visible. Sorry. So it's not that the lines disappear that easy. You can see if I set it to none, all these connections, these very nice details of the Plexus get lost, and with add I recover them more or less. Okay, the last thing I want to do with this shine effect is that I want to choose here this source point, and if I move it, you can see already that this is more or less the light source that creates these rays here and from which position it is coming. And for this, we do not just want to choose a simple value, but again, we want to animate it. We want it to move a bit like this. And the precise movement is again not so important, so we do not want to keyframe it, but just want to add a quick expression. So therefore, I go here to my shine effect, to the source point, and Alt or Option click on the stopwatch, and again type wiggle, and then in parentheses, this time we choose another value. So again, very slow wiggling, like 1 wiggle a second. So 1, and now we want it to move quite a bit, so quite large movements, slow but large movements, like from the midpoint, it should move something like 400 pixel in random directions, yeah? So once a second, 400 pixel. Yeah, so let's take a look at what this looks like so far. Okay, so what we want to do next is then to take care of these Plexus animations in the first part of the clip, so before this text occurs. And in this part, we will actually animate all of these Plexus points separately. And we will have about 100 points, so you can imagine that we do not want to move each of them by hand by keyframing the movement. So what we are going to do instead is we are going to use different expressions, and we are going to combine these expressions with the ExpressionTimeline. So this great new tool that you can get at mamoworld.com. or via iscripts.com. And so let's first take a look at which expressions we want to use. So we want to use expressions from the website MotionScript from Dan Abbott's, a great resource for expressions. And what you find there are in particular here these expressions, lab expressions. So if I click there, I find basically a large collection of expressions, and one very basic and useful one is, for example, random motion. So at the beginning, we just want our Plexus points to move randomly, and for this, we just pick this expression here. We just need this first one. You can see that there is also another expression for rotation, but we are not interested in rotating the Plexus points and also not scaling them. So we just need this position part. So again, I select it and oops, I select it and copy it, Control C, go to After Effects. Let me just make a little bit of space here. And what I'm going to do first is create a new solid, and this will just be a dummy. Make it quite small, 20 pixels, and white, such that we can see it very nice. And call it here dummy, so it's more like a placeholder for our later animation. I hit P key to reveal the position, Alt click, and have here now the expression text. So I delete the original text and do edit paste. There's nothing in the clipboard. What happened there? So let's try it again. Like this. Edit copy and go here. Again, Alt click on this, remove it, and do right click, edit paste. So this is German, unfortunately, so it's just paste. Okay, now we have here our point, and you can see that it is randomly moving. Let's go here to fit up to 100%, and it's randomly moving onto our surface. So I'm going to duplicate this point a bunch of times, and now you can see, and let's move here the preview area to the beginning. You can see that these points are now just randomly moving. And again, these are just placeholders. Later we are going to do this with Plexus points. Yeah? Okay, but this random kind of movement has one problem, and it is too fast. Yeah? And so later the Plexus point should move more smooth, slowly. And what it therefore do is we change these values here. So the expression, also if you look at it here, has at the beginning a few variables, a few parameters that you can change. And you can see the first is minimum segment duration and maximum segment duration. So this is how much time it uses for one movement, or one random part of the movement. So this means if we enlarge these two values, the movement gets slower. So it just determines the speed of the movement. So let's put this here to 4.25 instead of 0.25, and with this here we can go to something like 8. Now we would need to apply this to all the layers, so I copy the expression and I just use or make use of the timeline to apply it to all of them. So in the expression timeline you can combine several expressions, and if you start here, if you started newly, it says, okay, from 0 to infinity we just have keyframes, and now we say click here, add new expression, remove this value and paste Control V the expression just from here. Yeah. Now it says from 0 to infinity we will apply this expression, and we want to apply it to all of these dummy layers, so we hit P for all of them. Now their position is revealed. I can select their position and now hit Anwenden. Oh, sorry, I've got here the German interface. So you can change this by clicking on the expression timeline and choosing here interface language English. So now I have to restart the timeline, close this window. Sorry for this. So I start the expression timeline again. Now it has the English interface. And so we're going to add the expression. Again, I can copy it from here, copy, Control C, and here Control V to paste it. From 0 to infinity we have now this one expression, and we apply it to all of these positions. So apply. And if you now take a look at it, you can see that they move much slower, which will later look much nicer. Okay, but this is just the first kind of movement that we want to have, and we do not want to have it for the entire time, but just until frame 100. And after 100, you see that now the timeline enlarges. We want to have something else, and we do not want to have keyframes, but we want to have another expression. So we click on Add Expression, and let's look what expression we want to have after frame 100. Again, we go back here to the website from Dan Abbott's, go here back, And the thing we want to have there is an expression that I already used in my last tutorial. So it's really quite powerful, nice thing. And this is this random grid movement here. I click on it and have here this very long expression that lets lets layers move along a grid, as you can see here. Yeah, this kind of movement is caused by this expression. And again, I copy it like this, right-click, copy, Control-C, and you can see at the beginning it again has certain values here that control the speed of everything and so on. So in particular here, tmin, so minimum time, and tmax, maximum time, control the speed of the movement. And again, I paste the value here, so the expression here, and I want to change these values. Yeah? Tmin is currently at 0.5. 0.5 means just 0.5, and we want to change it to 5. So make it 10 times, make the time 10 times as long, or make it 10 times faster. And also tmax we set to 10 instead of 1. So compared to our original values here, I've just changed 0.5 to 5 and 1 to 10, just to make the grid movement slower. So you can modify it. You can also change the number of columns, so in how many columns here these how many columns this grid should have on which these properties move, but there 10 is okay for us. So if we apply this now again to all positions, so make sure you have the dummy layers positions all selected and hit apply. If we now take a look at it, you can see that we have first this random movement, and then from frame 100 on we have this different movement, this random grid movement. Yeah, this is a random movement, and now at frame 100 it moves randomly along this grid. Yeah, maybe let's make this here a little bit longer to see the grid movement a bit better. Yeah, random movement, and now random grid movement. Now we do not like this abrupt cut between the first and the second expression, so let's add here a fade. So in the timeline at frame 100 we click on add fade, and let's say this fade of 10 frames is okay, and again we apply it, and now you can see that instead of an abrupt change between the first and the second, we now have this nice transition, this nice fade from the first to the second expression. Okay, so now this second expression, this random grid movement, should also not go on forever. Namely, when here this text appears, at that moment the points of the plexus should not move on the grid anymore, but should move or travel along the outline of this mamoworld logo. Yeah. So what you therefore need is an outline of your logo, so a path or a shape of your logo. And if you have something like a mask or already from your text, you can use directly this. But I'm also going to show you what you can do if you have just an image and no passes available. So what you can do is use the auto trace tool. In case you do not know it, I just show this. So I drag in here my logo from which I want to have the path, from which I want to generate the path, and click on layer, auto trace. And now I have here several options that I can adjust how it should trace. So what it searches for are contours of your within your image that it draws masks around. Yeah, so it generates a lot of masks, and you can play around with these values here. I've seen that working on the luminance channel in this case and having a minimum area of 300 pixels works very well. Corner roundedness 0. So if I do this here with a preview, you can see it generates these yellow masks here. So there are several masks generated, and how many of them and so on are generated heavily depends on these parameters. So you need to play around with it to see what works good. I click OK, and now I have on this logo layer a lot of masks, and we are actually not interested in all of them. So let me just enlarge this here a bit. We are actually just interested in the main mask that goes here around all the text. So this is one nice thing, that we just get one large pass here and not one for each character that we of the text that we then would need to combine somehow. So I start deleting here these masks to figure out which one is the one we're interested in. So if I delete this, you can see this inner part of this O has disappeared, so we do not need this. Then the second one is this O here. The third one is the inner part of this D here. The fourth one, and now you can see this entire outline here disappeared. So I undo this, edit, undo. Yeah, now we know the fourth mask is the one we are interested in, and I'm going to delete all the others. So now just this one mask that follows this path here, and it doesn't follow it 100% precise, but this is quite nice for the effect that we wanted to have here. Anyway, so what we're going to do now is we open this mask and copy the mask path. So we have this mask path here, and we go to edit, copy. And now what we can do is we go to our dummy layer and go to the very first frame and click on the stopwatch, this time not with Alt selected, and it inserts a keyframe. And now we go to edit, paste, and now we can see that it pasted all of these, so this entire path here as a motion path for this dummy layer. So let me just solo this layer for a moment and turn off its expression. So we deactivate the expression that we've generated with the timeline, and now you can see that the point travels here along the outline of the logo. So let's put the logo below and also solo it so that we can see both. And now if you scrub here through time, you can see that the point is nicely traveling along this logo. Okay, I said we want to have this logo animation not at the beginning, but so the points should just move here along the logo when the logo appeared. So therefore we activate again the expression, and now we need this keyframe motion somehow to be incorporated in our timeline. Yeah. So let's go here back to the timeline and see what we can do. So first we have this random movement expression, then we have this random grid movement expression, and we want this to be only available until, or active until frame 250. And after 250 you could say, okay, now we want to have keyframes, and then we could take these keyframes here and move them to this end such that these keyframes are taken into account. But the problem with this is that then we would need to loop these keyframes, because we do not want our objects here to travel along this path just once, but again and again. So it should cycle forever like this. So what we therefore do is we leave these keyframes here at the beginning, and then make use of a special expression that I've just developed for this tutorial and that you can use here. So let me just quickly open it. Okay, so this is the expression. What it does, it loops the keyframes from the beginning of the layer, so from the beginning of the comp actually, until the frame that you put here. So in this case, until frame 50. And you can see that frame 50 is, if we go to frame 50, this is exactly where our keyframes here end. So this means in this case, it actually cycles through all keyframes. And then we have an offset. That means at which point it should start cycling around along the layer. And this has a benefit that if we now have 10 of these dummy layers, we can choose a different offset for all of them, such that they are not always at the same point, but are a little bit offsetted with respect to each other on this path. And speed, you do not really need to control the speed by moving these keyframes here closer together, or but you can simply adjust here this speed. So this says how fast it should cycle through these 50 first frames. So let's just use this expression, copy it, and add it here as a third expression. And these values of 50 frames and offset equals index means just the index is different for each layer. Yeah, so we have a little bit of offset for all of them. These are just fine for this particular example already. Okay, again, we want, or again, let's first look at how this is looking like. I can delete this logo now, so we do not need it anymore. And now again, I select the position of all these layers, of all these dummy layers, and hit apply. Now the expression is applied to all of them, including this third expression for the looping part. Also, of course, I must ensure that they all have these keyframes here. So therefore, I select these keyframes, Control C to copy them. And now I select all these positions here. Again, click on the stopwatch to activate the keyframing and go to Edit, Paste. Now I have the keyframed movement on all of them. Okay, now we can see what happened. Here we unsolo the layer, and yeah, maybe let's just at this point again look at another RAM preview. Okay, we see two things here now. First, the points nicely travel along the shape, but yeah, at this point, again, they abruptly change from this random grid movement to traveling along the shape. And of course, we want again to have a fading here instead between those two. So we again add a fade. In this case, we make it a little bit longer, like this. And the second thing that we also see is here when everything is finished at the end, of course, the points should not be there anymore. So they should just live until maybe around here where the zooming out happens. So we can shorten these layers here. But anyway, I'm not going to apply it to those layers here anymore, since they were just dummies to help us develop the effect. Now I can delete all of them except for one. And what we now need instead of these solid layers are new light layers. Yeah, I call these Plexus light because they are actually not used for lighting our scene, but just for the Plexus effect. And for this layer, I just copy this position here. Did I apply this already? So to make sure, I select it and hit apply. And I shorten the Plexus light exactly in the way I shortened here this dummy layer. And now I take the position, copy, Control C, or here, edit, copy. And now I go to the Plexus light and do edit, paste. So now the Plexus light moves exactly in the way that before this point layer here did. So it first performs, the Plexus light first performs here the random movement, then it performs the random grid movement, and then it follows its motion path. Yeah, it follows this cycle here. Oh, actually I pasted it at the wrong frame. If you can see it, the keyframes are now all here. So the position keyframes are all here. So this is of course not good. So I have to correct it and move them here to the beginning. And now it behaves exactly like this. So I can delete my last dummy layer, and what I do instead now is I add a new solid, which will take the Plexus itself. So I call it Plexus, make it maybe black, and put it here below the shine. And on this layer, we apply the Plexus effect. Plexus. And now, again, in the toolkit, we need to add an object. In this case, the object we want is lights. And by default, lights just considers all lights in our scene. So this means currently it just considers this one point light here. Yeah, it's important that you have chosen point lights because it just works with point lights. So it considers all point lights in your scene. So far you can't see anything since, yeah, we have just one point light, so 1 point to render, which is not enough to see something interesting. So what we're therefore going to do is to duplicate our layers. Yeah, now we have 10 points and still not much to see because lines between the points are just drawn if they are close enough, so we need many more of them. So I have 10 of them now and make them maybe shy, so this means we can later hide them if we use it, we don't use them anymore. And now with these 10 lights selected, I also click Ctrl D 10 times, which means we duplicate all of the 10 layers again 10 times. So we have now Ctrl D 20, again 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, and now we have about 100 light layers here in our scene that are all moving according to the expressions. Yeah, you can see here the random grid random movement, random grid movement, and later following here our mamoworld path. So to have here a more cleaned up interface, I click on this shy thing to hide all these shy layers. So now all looks again much nicer. But if we look at what we can see so far, it's not yet much. And again, this is because in the rendering option, we need to improve here a little bit. So we want to draw actually lines also between elements that have no connection between each other, that are far away, sorry. And so if we increase this here, it means also points that are more distant should be connected by lines. And why is it still not visible? Okay, yeah, the point is, of course, the Plexus layer, I have to go to the solid settings. It has still this size of these small solids that we used for testing, and of course, this Plexus layer should have comp size. So I click on Make Comp Size, and now hopefully, yeah, it looks much nicer. So yeah, so I think that's then it. Let's take a look at the final result. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial and it was useful for you, and in particular it showed you that you can combine this cool new Plexus plugin in very nice way with the ExpressionTimeline to really combine movements of arbitrary kind together in very fancy animations. That's it. I'm Matthias for mamoworld.com.